today,
Okay.
we are going headfirst into here today, gone tomorrow.
Ooh.
All those trends that had their moment in the spotlight and then vanished, sometimes leaving us scratching our heads.
It's amazing how they capture our attention for a brief, shining moment and then poof.
Yeah.
They're gone. Almost like they never existed.
To guide us through this graveyard of forgotten fads, I've got Lena here, who's got a knack, I think, for spotting these patterns and explaining why things catch on or don't.
Yeah.
Ready to take a trip down memory lane?
Absolutely. I'm always fascinated by the stories behind these trends and, why some stick and others fade. I think there's a lot we can learn from these blasts from the past.
Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to all our listeners on Spotify. Your feedback means the world to us, and guess what? You get to decide our next deep dive topic. Stick around until the end to find out how to vote for the trend that you want us to unpack next.
Oh, that's great.
But for now, let's kick things off with a trend that many of you have probably experienced firsthand. The rise and fall of frozen yogurt shops.
Ah, frozen yogurt. The supposed healthy alternative to ice cream. It was everywhere for a while there. Every corner, had a shop with those swirling machines and rows of toppings.
Yeah, just begging to be piled high.
Oh, yeah.
I'll admit, I fell for it too. The promise of a guilt-free treat with all those fresh fruit and granola options, hard to resist.
Yeah.
And then just as quickly as it exploded, the froyo craze seemed to melt away.
Right.
What happened?
Well, several factors contributed to the decline. Remember all those articles about how frozen yogurt wasn't actually as healthy as it was marketed to be? Turns out many brands were loaded with sugar. Not that far off from a scoop of good old-fashioned ice cream.
That's right. Yeah, I remember reading that and feeling a bit betrayed. But besides the health halo fading, what else contributed to the froyo shop meltdown?
Yeah. Well, competition played a role, too. Remember the rise of the artisanal ice cream shops around the same time? They were offering, the unique flavors and high-quality ingredients, appealing to a more sophisticated palate.
Right.
Plus, let's face it, sometimes you just crave the richness and indulgence of real ice cream, even if it means a few extra calories.
Yeah, you're right. A cup of froyo with fruit just doesn't hit the spot the same way as, a scoop of creamy homemade pistachio ice cream does.
Right.
But hey, maybe froyo will make a comeback someday. Stranger things have happened in the world of trends. Speaking of things that seem to disappear overnight, let's talk about planking.
Oh, yes. Planking. The art of lying face down in the most unexpected places. I remember seeing photos of people planking on park benches, statues, even on top of cars.
It was a true internet phenomenon, wasn't it?
It was.
People were competing to find the most creative and outrageous places to plank.
Oh, yeah.
It was silly, it was harmless,
Yeah.
and it definitely had its moment in the spotlight, but then poof.
Gone.
It was gone as quickly as it had arrived.
Yeah.
What do you think caused its demise?
Well, like many internet challenges, planking was inherently repetitive. There are only so many ways you can lie face down before it loses its novelty. Plus, I think there was a safety element involved, Some people were planking in dangerous places, which led to negative press and probably discouraged others from participating.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Remember that guy who planked on his balcony railing?
Yeah.
7 stories up.
Oh my gosh.
Not exactly a trend you want to encourage.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that even silly trends can have unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Speaking of trends that might make you cringe in retrospect, how about those mustache finger tattoos?
Oh my goodness. The finger mustache. I actually knew someone who got one of those.
Oh, wow.
They thought it was hilarious at the time.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah. Not so much. It's like a permanent reminder of a fleeting trend. And let's be honest, holding your finger under your nose to complete the look probably got old pretty quickly.
I can only imagine the awkward stares and explanations. It's amazing how trends can influence our decisions, even permanent ones.
Right.
But before we dive deeper into the psychology of trends,
Okay.
let's move on to a phenomenon that took the world by storm. The Harlem Shake.
The Harlem Shake. Now, that was a chaotic explosion of energy. It was like a flash mob meets a music video gone wild.
It seemed like everyone was doing it, from students in dorm rooms to office workers in boardrooms.
Everyone, yeah.
It was fun, it was silly, and it was a perfect example of how the internet can make something go viral overnight.
Right.
And just as quickly as it spread,
It vanished.
Yeah. People moved on to the next shiny object, the next viral challenge.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of things that were hyped as the next big thing,
Okay.
remember Segways?
Oh, yeah.
They were going to revolutionize transportation?
Yeah.
We were told. Cities would be redesigned to accommodate these personal transporters.
Yeah, the future.
What happened there?
Well, the Segway definitely had that cool factor. It was futuristic, it was sleek,
Mm-hmm.
but it was also bulky and expensive and not exactly practical for navigating crowded streets or
Now,
sidewalks.
let's be honest, they weren't exactly the most graceful things to ride. I
Right.
remember seeing people kind of wobble around on them,
Yeah.
looking like they were about to take a tumble at any moment.
Oh, yeah, I remember that too.
The hype didn't match the reality, and the Segway ultimately became more of a novelty item than a mainstream mode of transportation.
Hmm.
What about NFTs? They seem to
Yeah.
come out of nowhere and dominate the headlines for a while.
NFTs or non-fungible tokens. They were the digital gold rush of 2021, weren't they? Suddenly, everyone was buying and selling digital art, memes, and even tweets for exorbitant amounts of money.
I remember feeling like I was missing out on something huge. Everyone was talking about NFTs,
Yeah.
but I couldn't wrap my head around what they actually were.
Yeah. To understand NFTs, you have to understand blockchain, the technology that underpins them.
Right.
It's a decentralized and tamper-proof ledger that allows for the creation of unique digital assets.
Okay.
So in essence, you're buying a piece of digital ownership,
Hmm.
a verifiable record that you own that specific digital item.
Okay, that makes a bit more sense.
Yeah.
But why did the NFT craze fizzle out?
Well, the market was incredibly volatile.
Oh, I see.
Values skyrocketed and then plummeted just as quickly.
Right.
There were also concerns about environmental impact, as the process of creating and trading NFTs uses a lot of energy.
Oh, okay.
Plus, there was a lot of speculation and hype,
Yeah.
which led to inflated prices and a sense that the whole thing was a bit of a bubble waiting to burst.
Right.
NFTs still exist, but they've moved away from that frenzied speculation and are finding more practical applications in areas like digital identity, supply chain management, and even the future of art collecting.
It's not just about owning a JPEG of a Bored Ape anymore.
Exactly. NFTs have evolved beyond their initial hype and are finding a more sustainable niche. It's a classic example of how trends can transform and adapt over time. Speaking of things that were popular for a fleeting moment, let's talk about cup stacking.
Ah, cup stacking.
Yeah,
It was a sport of champions,
it was for a
at
while.
least for a while. Remember those kids who could stack and unstack cups with lightning speed?
Yeah, oh yeah.
It was mesmerizing to watch. There were even world championships.
World championships.
But then it seemed to fade away. What happened?
Cup stacking was a fun and challenging activity. It developed hand-eye coordination and focus,
Mm-hmm.
but it lacked the staying power to become a mainstream sport.
Right. It was kind of a niche hobby.
Yeah.
And once the initial novelty wore off, people moved on to other things. Speaking of novelty items that came and went, do you remember fidget spinners?
Oh, fidget spinners. They were everywhere. Classrooms, offices, even on the evening news.
Right.
They were marketed as stress relievers, tools to help people focus.
I have to admit, I fell for it too. I bought a fidget spinner thinking it would help me concentrate, but it ended up being more of a distraction.
Yeah, they were definitely mesmerizing to watch, but the hype far exceeded their actual benefits. We actually did a whole deep dive episode on fidget spinners a while back, didn't we?
That's right. If you're curious about the rise and fall of the fidget spinner, go back and give that episode a listen. We covered everything from the science behind their supposed benefits to the marketing tactics that made them a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
But for now, let's spin our way over to the next trend. 3D everything.
3D. Remember when it was going to be the future of entertainment? 3D movies, 3D TVs, even 3D phones. Everyone was scrambling to get on board.
I still have a pair of those clunky 3D glasses somewhere.
I know.
The promise was immersive, groundbreaking entertainment,
Yeah.
but did it live up to the hype?
Not really. The glasses were uncomfortable, the 3D effect wasn't always that impressive, and it often caused headaches.
Yeah. And let's not forget the price tag. You needed a special TV, special glasses,
Yeah.
and then you had to pay extra for the 3D movies.
Yeah.
It just wasn't sustainable.
No.
So 3D retreated back into its niche, mostly used for big-budget blockbusters where the visuals really benefit from that added dimension.
Right. Yeah.
It's amazing how trends can be influenced by factors like comfort and cost. Speaking of fashion choices that may have been a bit much, remember double polo shirts with popped collars?
Oh, yes. The epitome of early 2000s preppy style.
Right.
It was a look that definitely had its moment, but I'm not sure it's one we'll be seeing make a comeback anytime soon.
It's funny how trends that seem so cool at the time can become so dated so quickly. It makes you wonder what current fashion trends will make us cringe in a few years. But before we spiral down that rabbit hole, let's talk about a piece of tech that was ahead of its time. Google Glass.
Google Glass. The augmented reality glasses that promise to change the way we interact with the world.
It was like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
I know.
You could get directions,
Mhm.
take pictures, access information,
Yeah.
all with a voice command.
It was groundbreaking technology,
Yeah.
but it arrived before the world was ready, I think.
Yeah.
The price tag was a major barrier, there were privacy concerns, and let's face it, they looked a bit geeky.
Yeah, the glass hole stereotype didn't help.
Right.
It's a shame because the potential of augmented reality is incredible,
Yeah.
but Google Glass just wasn't the right product at the right time.
Maybe someday they'll try again with a more refined design and a better understanding of social norms.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that push boundaries, let's talk about the original formula for Loco.
Ah, yes. The infamous blackout in a can.
Yes.
This caffeinated alcoholic beverage gained a reputation for its potent effects and quickly became a college party staple. I remember hearing stories about Four Loko and thinking, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Oh, yeah.
And it was.
It was.
There were concerns about its safety.
Yeah.
Due to the combination of high alcohol content and caffeine.
Yeah.
It led to regulatory crackdowns,
Right.
and the original formula was eventually banned. They reformulated it without the caffeine, but it just wasn't the same.
No.
The original Four Loko became a legend, a cautionary tale of a trend that went too far.
Speaking of trends that were popular with a younger crowd, remember silly bands?
Oh, silly bands, those colorful rubber bands.
Yes.
Shaped like everything,
Everything.
from animals to logos.
Yeah.
Kids were obsessed with them.
They were. They were collectible, they were tradable,
Yeah.
and somehow incredibly addictive to wear on your wrists.
Yeah. I remember seeing kids with their arms covered in silly bands.
Oh, yeah.
Little colorful bracelets of friendship. But then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they vanished. What happened there?
Well, like many fads, the novelty of silly bands eventually wore off.
Yeah.
Once everyone had a collection, the trading frenzy died down,
Right.
and they ended up in the bottom of toy boxes or forgotten in backpacks.
It's amazing how quickly things can go from must-have to yesterday's news. And speaking of things that quickly became obsolete, let's talk about dual discs.
Dual discs. The idea was to have a CD on one side and a DVD on the other.
Yeah.
It seemed like a good idea at the time. A way to bridge the gap between physical media and the growing digital world.
But it was a short-lived trend, wasn't it? What factors contributed to its demise?
The rise of digital downloads and streaming services
Oh, yeah.
made dual discs relevant pretty quickly. Why buy a physical disc when you could access music and movies instantly online?
It's a reminder of how fast technology can change and how trends can become outdated almost overnight.
Yeah.
From physical media to wearable activism, let's talk about those rubber bracelets for various causes.
Oh, yeah.
Like the iconic yellow Livestrong bracelet.
Right. Those were everywhere. They started with a good cause, raising awareness and funds for cancer research. But then everyone started making bracelets for everything.
Yeah.
It became a fashion statement, and the message sometimes got lost in the trend. Like many trends, it peaked and then faded. People moved on to other ways to show their support. Speaking of trends that involved physical movement, let's revisit the mannequin challenge.
Oh, the mannequin challenge. Everyone froze in place like mannequins.
Yeah.
And someone with a camera walked through the scene,
Okay.
usually set to the song Black Beatles.
Yeah, it was creative. A creative way to use video and music, and it was fun to see how different groups interpreted the challenge, from classrooms to sports teams to celebrities.
Everyone got in on the action.
Everyone.
But then, as with most viral challenges,
Yeah.
it faded away.
It's hard to keep people engaged with the same thing for too long.
True. Speaking of things that had a moment in the sun, remember when feather earrings were all the rage?
Oh, yeah. Feather earrings, they were bold, they were colorful, and definitely made a statement.
They were a staple of boho chic fashion.
Yes.
And you can find them in every color and length imaginable.
Yeah, but then, like feathers in the wind, they vanished from the fashion scene. Right. I think people just got tired of them. They were kind of a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
And the novelty wore off.
From fashion accessories to mobile gaming, let's talk about Draw Something. Remember that?
Oh, draw something. It was like Pictionary for the digital age.
Yeah.
You drew a picture and your friend had to guess what it was.
It was a simple concept, but it was incredibly addictive.
Yeah.
People were spending hours drawing and guessing, and it was a great way to connect with friends. But then Zynga, the company that made Words with Friends, acquired Draw Something, and things started to go downhill.
Right.
The app became more commercialized, and the user experience suffered. People lost interest, and Draw Something faded into the app graveyard.
The app graveyard. Sad.
The classic example of a trend that was ruined by corporate greed. Moving on to a trend that was more of a phenomenon than a fad, the dress.
Ah, the dress, the garment that divided the internet.
It was a simple photo of a dress, but people couldn't agree on what color it was.
I know.
Black and blue or white and gold.
It sparked fierce debates, scientific explanations, and even celebrity opinions. It was a true you had to be there moment.
I remember feeling like I was going crazy
I know.
because I saw one color and my friends swore it was another.
I know.
The intensity of the debate was incredible, but it was also a fleeting moment in internet history.
Yeah.
Once the mystery was solved, people moved on. It's a reminder that sometimes trends are less about the actual thing and more about the collective experience. And speaking of collective experiences, we can't forget about Pokemon Go.
Oh yeah, Pokemon Go, the augmented reality game that took the world by storm.
People were walking around their neighborhoods,
Yeah.
parks, and cities
Everywhere.
trying to catch virtual Pokemon on their
It
phone.
was a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
You couldn't go anywhere without seeing people glued to their phones, flicking Pokeballs at, invisible creatures.
It was a great way to get people outside and interacting with each other, even if it was just a battle for control of a gym. It was a fitness craze, disguised as a game.
Absolutely.
But, like all trends, the initial frenzy eventually subsided. People caught most of the Pokemon, the novelty wore off, and life went back to normal. Sort of. Pokemon Go is still around,
Yeah.
and it has a dedicated fan base.
Yes.
It's proof that a trend can evolve and adapt, finding a sustainable niche even after the initial hype fades. Speaking of adapting, let's talk about a footwear trend that attempted to revolutionize the way we run. Barefoot toe shoes.
Ah, yes. Those shoes that look like gloves for your feet. Vibram 5 fingers, if I remember correctly.
That's the one. The idea was to mimic running barefoot
Right.
while still providing some protection. I remember when those first came out, people were either intrigued or completely repulsed.
They were supposed to strengthen your foot muscles and improve your running form by encouraging a more natural gait.
They definitely had their fans, mostly among runners who were looking for a more minimalist approach. But I think the unique five-toed design
Yeah.
was a barrier for a lot of people. Not everyone was ready to embrace that aesthetic.
The look was definitely polarizing.
Right.
Some people loved them, while others found them downright bizarre.
I think the lack of mainstream appeal ultimately contributed to their decline. Maybe they'll make a comeback someday, though.
Maybe.
Fashion is cyclical after all.
Right. Speaking of things that cycle back, let's talk about a trend that was less about fashion and more about fear. Creepy clown sightings.
Oh yeah, that was a strange one. Back in 2016, it seemed like creepy clowns were popping up everywhere. I remember feeling a bit uneasy even going to the park with my kids.
It started with a few isolated reports, but it quickly escalated into a full-blown phenomenon.
Yeah.
People were seeing clowns lurking in the woods, standing on street corners, even chasing cars. It was like something out of a nightmare.
Right.
And it played on people's deepest fears.
Yeah.
Social media definitely amplified the hysteria. With videos and photos of creepy clown sightings going viral, it got so bad that some schools and communities had to issue warnings and cancel events. It's interesting how a trend can tap into our collective anxieties and create such a widespread sense of unease.
It shows how quickly a seemingly harmless prank can spiral out of control, especially in the age of social media.
Right?
Thankfully, the creepy clown craze eventually died down,
Yeah.
but it left a lot of people with a lingering fear of clowns. Maybe that's why we haven't seen a resurgence of clown-themed trends lately.
Maybe so. It's a good reminder that trends can have a real impact, both positive and negative. But that's what makes looking back at them so fascinating. It's a window into how our culture changes and how easily we can be swept up in the latest fad.
It makes you wonder what current trends will be the subject of future deep dives. What do you think? Any predictions?
That's a tough one. Trends are so unpredictable.
Yeah.
But that's what makes them so intriguing. Who knows what the next big thing will be? Only time will tell.
Speaking of time, we've covered a lot of ground in this episode. We've explored 22 trends that once captivated the spotlight and then vanished, leaving behind memories, nostalgia, and maybe a little bit of cringe.
A little bit of cringe.
From the rise and fall of frozen yogurt shops to the bizarre world of creepy clown sightings, we've delved into the ephemeral nature of trends and why some things just don't last. But before we wrap things up, I want to remind you that you, our amazing listeners, get to choose the topic of our next deep dive.
That's right.
Head over to our Spotify page and leave a comment letting us know which trend you're dying to know more about. We'll be taking your votes into account and choosing the trend with the most interest.
We're so excited to see what you choose.
It's going to be epic, so what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Go vote.
Go vote.
And until next time, keep your eyes peeled for those trends that are here today.
And gone tomorrow.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah. It's fascinating how, like, a simple image can spark, like, a global debate.
You're talking about the dress, right?
Yeah.
That was wild.
Absolutely. One photo, and suddenly everyone's arguing. Is it blue and black? Is it white and gold?
Yeah.
It really highlighted how subjective our perception can be.
And how easily the internet can turn those differences into a massive debate.
Yeah.
I mean, who knew a dress could be so controversial?
It's a perfect example of a trend where the shared experience, mattered more than the actual object. Like we were all trying to solve the same, visual puzzle.
Yeah.
And that created a connection.
Yeah.
Even if we disagreed on the answer, it just proved that sometimes the simplest things have the biggest impact.
Yeah. Speaking of big impacts, let's shift gears to a trend that got people moving, literally. Pokemon Go.
Ah, Pokemon Go. Remember when, like, the whole world transformed into a giant scavenger hunt? People of all ages, phones in hand, trying to, quote, catch them all in the real world.
I remember walking through parks and seeing crowds of people huddled around, cheering as they battled for control of a gym. It was incredible how it brought people together and got them exploring their surroundings in a whole new way.
It was a brilliant use of augmented reality, blending the virtual and physical worlds in a way that was both engaging and addictive. Plus, it got people moving. I remember seeing groups of friends walking for miles just to hatch eggs and catch rare Pokemon.
Yeah, it was a fitness craze disguised as a game. But like all trends, the initial frenzy eventually subsided.
Yeah.
People caught most of the Pokemon, the novelty wore off, and life went back to normal. Sort of. Pokemon Go is still around.
Yeah.
And it has a dedicated fan base. It's proof that a trend can evolve and adapt,
Right.
finding a sustainable niche even after the initial hype fades. Speaking of adapting, let's talk about a footwear trend that attempted to revolutionize the way we run. Barefoot toe shoes.
Ah, yes, those shoes that look like gloves for your feet. Vibram Five Fingers, if I remember correctly.
That's the one. The idea was to mimic running barefoot
Right.
while still providing some protection. I remember when those first came out, people were either intrigued or completely repulsed.
They were supposed to strengthen your foot muscles and improve your running form by encouraging a more natural gait.
They definitely had their fans, mostly among runners who were looking for a more minimalist approach. But I think the unique five-toe design
Yeah.
was a barrier for a lot of people. Not everyone was ready to embrace that aesthetic.
The look was definitely polarizing. Some people loved them, while others found them downright bizarre.
I think the lack of mainstream appeal ultimately contributed to their decline. Maybe we'll make a comeback someday, though.
Maybe, yeah.
Fashion is cyclical, after all.
Right. Speaking of things that cycle back, let's talk about a trend that was less about fashion and more about fear. Creepy clown sightings.
Oh, yeah. That was a strange one.
He was.
Back in 2016, it seemed like creepy clowns were popping up everywhere. I remember feeling a bit uneasy, even going to the park with my kids.
It started with few isolated reports, but it quickly escalated into a full-blown phenomenon. People were seeing clowns lurking in the woods, standing on street corners, even chasing cars. It was like something out of a nightmare.
Right.
And it played on people's deepest fears.
Yeah.
Social media definitely amplified the hysteria, with videos and photos of creepy clown sightings going viral.
Wow.
It got so bad that some schools and communities had to issue warnings and cancel events. It's interesting how a trend can tap into our collective anxieties and create such a widespread sense of unease.
It shows how quickly a seemingly harmless prank can spiral out of control, especially in the age of social media.
Right.
Thankfully, the creepy clown craze eventually died down.
Yeah.
But it left a lot of people with a lingering fear of clowns. Maybe that's why we haven't seen a resurgence of clown-themed trends lately.
Maybe so. It's a good reminder that trends can have a real impact, both positive and negative. But that's what makes looking back at them so fascinating. It's a window into how our culture changes and how easily we can be swept up in the latest fad.
It makes you wonder what current trends will be the subject of future deep dives. What do you think? Any predictions?
That's a tough one. Trends are so unpredictable, but that's what makes them so intriguing. Who knows what the next big thing will be? Only time will tell.
Speaking of time, we've covered a lot of ground in this episode. We've explored 22 trends that once captivated the spotlight and then vanished, leaving behind memories, nostalgia, and maybe a little bit of cringe.
A little bit of cringe.
From the rise and fall of frozen yogurt shops to the bizarre world of creepy clown sightings, we've delved into the ephemeral nature of trends and why some things just don't last. But before we wrap things up, I want to remind you that you, our amazing listeners, get to choose the topic of our next deep dive.
That's right.
Head over to our Spotify page and leave a comment, letting us know which trend you're dying to know more about. We'll be taking your votes into account and choosing the trend with the most interest.
We're so excited to see what you choose. It's going to be epic, so what are you waiting for? Go vote.
And until next time, keep your eyes peeled for those trends that are here today.
And gone tomorrow.
It's amazing how these trends take us back, isn't it? Like each one is a little time capsule
Yeah.
of our collective past.
It really is. It's fascinating to see how tastes, interests,
Yeah.
and even our fears can change so dramatically in such a short span of time.
And makes you realize that nothing is truly permanent.
Yeah.
Not even those trends that feel like they'll be around forever. I mean, who would have thought that fidget spinners would one day be relics of the past?
I know, right? It's a good reminder to appreciate the things we enjoy while they're here.
Yeah.
You never know when they might disappear or
Yeah.
evolve into something completely different. But maybe that's part of the allure of trends. Their fleeting nature makes them feel special, almost exclusive, like you're part of a secret club while it lasts.
And then when the trend fades, you're left with these shared memories and inside jokes that connect you to others who were there, who experienced it with you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a badge of honor, a sign that you lived through a particular cultural moment, whether it was the Harlem Shake era or the peak of the Pokemon Go craze. Those shared experiences shape our collective identity, don't they?
They absolutely do. And revisiting them, like we've done today, can spark some really interesting conversations and insights. We've certainly covered a lot of ground today. From the rise and fall of frozen yogurt shops to the bizarre world of creepy clown sightings, we've explored 22 trends that once ruled our lives and then faded into the background. We've laughed, we've cringed, and maybe even learned a thing or two about ourselves along the way. Hopefully, we've sparked your curiosity about the trends that shaped our culture. But the conversation doesn't end here. Don't forget that you, our amazing listeners, have the power to choose our next deep dive topic. So head over to our Spotify page and leave a comment, letting us know which of the trends we discussed today you'd like us to explore further. We can't wait to see what you choose. It's going to be epic.
Until then, keep exploring, keep discovering, and keep your eyes peeled for those trends that are here today.
And gone tomorrow.